Good afternoon. This is the Personnel Committee meeting of I'm pushing it, August 4. Yeah, you wish. I'm Steve Havey, the chairman of the Personnel Committee. And first on the agenda will be a roll call. Megan?
Mr. Havey?
Here.
Mr. Harris? Here. Mrs. Burdick? Here. Mr. Graves? Here. Mr. Ricky?
Here.
Mrs. Root? Mr. Stockin?
Here.
Mr. Crandall? 6 members present.
Thank you. Next up, we have the approval of minutes from July 7. That would be Mr. Stockin moves that, and Mr. Ricky seconds. Any corrections or adjustments to those? All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Opposed? Those are approved. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Mr. Budinger. He has a couple of items that he'd like to speak to us about. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I believe the first thing is a request to create and fill human resources assistant. My office has always had 2 assistants in it. One of them retired earlier this year, and you gave me permission to let her continue her employment part-time. And I'm hoping to continue that into the future as long as I possibly can, because there's a great benefit to our office for that. So I would like to create another position and hire a full-time replacement for her. We finally did get an exam date in October for this position, which means that we'll get the results and all that by February, but I'm looking to hire someone possibly provisionally before then, because 2022 is going to be a very busy year, and we need to have someone up to speed as quickly as possible before we get too far into the year. So that is my request. If anyone has any questions regarding that.
Somebody want to move that? Mr. Graves moves it, second. Mr. Ricky? Okay, questions for Mr. Budinger?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir, go ahead.
just to clarify, so for next year's budget, you'll be maintaining the part-time that you already have and including this newly created position?
I have that in my budget request right now. Right now, the person that's part-time is the person that retired. I don't know how long she's going to do that. I would like to keep that position as long as possible, because there's a lot of times where we're just shorthanded, especially when you work in vacations and all that. But we're also looking at possibly getting some HR software, so that 2022 is going to be, if we do end up getting approval to get that, that's going to take up one of my assistants' time, a good amount of their time. We also need to be able to train this person, and it's not a couple of weeks of training. There's a lot to go over. So I would like to keep her as long as I can, and if it's not her, even somebody else. Obviously, if she leaves, then I would come back to you, and you already given me permission to keep her for a while. I would come back to you, and then we could go back over it if you wanted to look that over. But I did budget for a part-time and this new full-time in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments? I can tell you that HR is a backbone of any organization, and it's not easy. And I feel for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Item number 2?
Yeah, yes, sir. It's a request to just transfer $380 from our .4s to .2s, but we're trying to purchase a computer. We had money budgeted for a computer, but we were just a little bit short. So we're going to steal some of our monies from our fees account if you allow us to do so.
Mr. Harris moves it. Mr. Ricky seconds. Questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was easy, huh? Okay. Up next, we're going to hear from the election commissioners. Who's going to speak? Mr. Reynolds? Good afternoon, sir. Yes, you do.
Yeah, I'm good to go.
Perfect.
I think you have memorandums of explanation for a couple grants we'd like to apply for. The first one is for $40,000 approximately, and what we want to do is buy printers for every poll site. These are on-demand printers, so what will happen is when you go to the poll site, they'll print your ballot for you as you're right there. Now we're wasting probably about $6,000 a year in ballots because we have to estimate how many we're gonna need. And of course, we always wanna be over a little bit to be safe. So if we do get this grant, we're gonna buy printers for every poll site, and we'll have a few backups, and it should save us quite a bit of money. So we appreciate your support for that.
Okay. Somebody want to move that? Oh, Mr. Stocking and Mr. Ricky. Thank you. Questions and comments?
Just for clarification, sir,
Mr. Harris?
are we moving the $17,000 one?
This is a $40,000 one.
Okay, okay,
That's the 40.
thank you.
Okay. Do you have another question out there? Mr. Fanton, go ahead.
The printer will actually print a ballot.
It will.
Somebody has to program this printer.
They'll be connected to our little iPods there that we use to sign you
So
in with.
in other words, if you were in town of Alma, you'd have a different printout than you would
Right,
necessarily.
exactly, right.
So,
They'll be specific to every poll that your poll site. Yeah, yeah. And it should save us a lot of money.
Mrs. Burdick?
Who will determine who's going to print those ballots and what's the criteria and how many will be printed?
They're gonna be printed when you go to vote by the election inspectors.
Oh, so it won't be extra ballots that'll have to be printed if somebody,
No, these will be printed on demand. When you walk in the town of Alfred to vote, you sign in, they're gonna print a ballot. It's gonna come right out for you then. Exactly. It'll be that's right. It'll be specific to your town. That's correct.
Mrs. Burdick
one
again.
more question. So the election inspectors are the ones that are going to be printing the ballot,
Yes,
correct?
they are.
Is there a way if the ballot is printed incorrectly or there's an error? Is
Well,
that keep track of?
not anticipating, but we are gonna do it every poll site. We're gonna print extra ballots in the beginning to have some on in case something went south on us for some reason. So they will have ballots there, so we'll be protected. No, no. It'll only be specific to the poll site that you're at. If you've got a proposition in Wellsville, it'll be on your ballot only. That won't show up in Cuba or whatever.
Mr. Decker?
What happens if there's a power outage on election day?
We have battery backup.
Have battery backup?
We have battery
At
backups.
every poll site?
We will have, yeah. You won't, we'll be well protected, and we're gonna have extra ballots as well.
Right.
Other questions? If not, whoop. Go ahead, sir.
How's
Mr.
this gonna
Graves.
be paid? This is a grant?
That's what this memorandum is for. We're asking to be able to apply for this grant for $40,000.
So we're not sure. We're gonna apply for it.
We're gonna apply for the grant. We're not gonna buy anything we don't get the grant, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just
Mr.
a
Harris.
comment. Hope you do get the grant, of course, but it seems to me, assuming these things have a life expectancy of more than 5 years or something, that, 40 machines, it would be worth your while to buy them outright anyway if you're losing $6,000 a year in ballots. Is that right?
That's a good point, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I saw another question somewhere. Where was it? Mr. Barnes?
Yeah, obviously around the country these days, big question is prevention of fraud, and several states have made changes to so-called improve the chance or lessen the chances of fraud. How this and anything else in the New York State system that was handed down to us, how are we protected from fraud? That maybe some of are we less protected than some of these new other states that have come up with or programs, or are we still susceptible to certain types of fraud?
I think we're very secure here. I mean, our systems aren't on the internet, so we have a machine in our office that everything happens within our office, so nothing goes that regard.
So-
And these printers are gonna be specific to the, set up specifically to the, and they'll probably end up being hardwired because the Wi-Fi cards aren't
Mhm.
that, always that dependable, as Mr. Harris could attest to.
Well, what I'm referring to is New York State election laws as they stand now. Are they still possibility of fraud? For instance, we have signatures, but we used to have to write it out with a pen. Now we write it out with our finger or a brush of some sort. In my case, it looked nothing like my signature is to me, and I worry about that. Obviously, we don't have to show an ID, which I think is important, but New York State's never going to do that, not for the time being anyway. But I'm just, that's what I'm getting at, is more of the statewide. I don't recall any major fraud publicity in the 2020 election from New York State, but a lot of states did. And I just,
I think our state's secure. I understand what you said about the signature. We do try to compare them, and we do check it out. Now we'll have you on file. If you voted once on the screen, we'll have it the next time to compare as well. I don't disagree with you. I'm not opposed to people showing IDs. I would be in favor of that. Unfortunately, we don't have that in our power to demand.
I
But I would
understand.
agree with you on that subject.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris, you had a question.
Brent, something fishy did happen in that primary because there is no way Jan Burdick beat me by 2 votes.
That's a valid point.
Mr. Harris, maybe it was 4.
I can't really address that.
Can you address the fact that Mr. Barnes beat me by just a few in the primary? Can you address that?
Sorry, I
All
can't.
right, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Decker,
what's to prevent someone from being dishonest and printing off ballots and putting them through the machine? Let's say elections inspectors right there printing off illegal ballots.
They could do it now. We got a whole stack of them. They could fill them out when they're sitting there. But yeah, I mean, in my opinion, you'd have to be insane to do something like that. But we have a copy of all the paper ballots. And if numbers started getting really off, we could check, with who signed in and how many ballots there were, and it's pretty fail-safe. So that's not a concern. And plus, the folks of Allegheny County are very honest people.
all right, other questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried.
Thank
Item
you.
number 2, sir.
We have another request to apply for a grant for 17,000 plus. And this is just for early voting, equipment and education and training. We have to secure our equipment. One thing that we know, we have an early poll site in Wellsville, but that's not necessarily always going to be the case. If, for example, it will always be the case in major elections, but if, for example, you had an election, we had a primary in Cuba and a primary in Willing, but nothing else, then you're going to have to go to Cuba, to the most populated district, to have the election. It wouldn't be in Wellsville. Public Works built us a cage for Wellsville for last year out of some rack they had, that we could lock our machine in and lock our poll books and everything in, and it worked very well. So with a grant like this, it's only 17,000, but we will use it for that type of thing. We're also going to buy cables to hardwire the computers directly to the new printers if we get that grant, because Wi-Fi cards aren't always that trustworthy. So that's what this grant is about, just for different equipment and stuff.
I'll move it, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. Second? Mr. Harris? Questions and comments on this topic? Mr. Decker?
I have a question. This grant and the previous one, where are those funds coming from?
Their state.
The state.
Other questions? Ooh, Mr. Barnes.
Yes, the satellite that was in Wellsville. Now, you're saying that's going to continue?
It will continue with early voting if they make us, the state laws of making us do that. The reason it wouldn't, what I said was the reason it wouldn't be in Wellsville would be if there was a situation where Wellsville didn't have a primary, say.
Right.
And there wasn't a major election like a gubernatorial race, something like that, then it could be in a different area.
Well, the original when early voting called for, because of our size of our county, we only had to have the one site.
Right.
Then they've changed it. What's the specific wording for the requiring us to have a,
Well, I don't know
Satellite.
specific wording, but the bottom line is you have to have it in the most highly populated area in your county. And Wellsville is our most highly populated poll
so
site.
if Cuba was to add 10 people and became the most heavily populated?
It would, that's right.
But I fail to understand why the need.
Well-
How many people actually voted at the Wellsville site?
I don't have the numbers in my head, but it wasn't a lot. But I will say this, we tried to get a variance on this law. Borello and Giglio both supported us, but in the situation that we're in, politically speaking, in New York State, they didn't let it happen. We did fine. We ran 3,000 people through our major election in our office, early votes, and everything went very smoothly. There was no long waiting lines. So it was really a waste of time and a waste of money. I can't remember the number of votes in Wellsville, but it was minimal. Early voting was really
I think it
minimal.
was
and
like
very-
17%, wasn't it, Brent?
Yeah, it was very low, yeah. And it was
low.
very costly, too.
Yeah, that's what my whole purpose of my questioning.
Yeah.
It just absolutely ridiculous. I actually I didn't vote there. I old fashioned, I'm gonna vote on election day at an election poll or whatever. I happened to be there. I asked the people there how many had been there, and they hadn't had anybody that day.
Yeah.
This was
Oh, yeah.
about 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
It was crazy.
So it just,
Trouble is, our hands are really tied.
I
They really
understand
are,
it,
Carl.
but I want to, everything we can do to untie them, I'm in favor of.
We're gonna continue to keep asking for a variance and see if, our guys can help us, but,
Thank you.
that's
That's all I can ask.
where we're at. Yeah, we'll try, sir. I agree with you.
Something else for a commissioner? Anything? Nothing? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Commissioner
much.
Reynolds.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we've got a couple of items from referrals from committees. The first one is a public safety item. Mr. Healy, do you want to address that, or?
I'll let the county administrator.
All right.
This is the matter we just brought up in public safety about treating the current undersheriff who will be leaving service very soon with the same rules we've treated other undersheriffs. These are people that have retired previously from other employers, have come back to work under waivers from the retirement system full-time for the county, and we'll be treating them consistently with the cash out of their earned accruals. They'll cash out all of their vacation time, all of their personal, and half of their sick time.
I'll move it, Mr. Chairman.
That would be Mr. Graves, and do we have a second? Mr. Harris. Questions on the matter? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. I do have another public safety matter, however. Public Defender Barb Kelly is requesting permission to create one full-time paralegal. And that is grade 4 step base to 11. And the primary responsibility of this position would be to the management of discovery provided under recent reforms. That is moved by Mr. Stockin, second by Mr. Harris. Discussion on the subject. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. We do have one, I believe the county administrator would like to speak on a different matter. That would be the GIS item.
The GIS item? I'm sorry, I do not have that page in front of me.
Don't you?
No.
Here, check that out, bottom one.
Okay, this is a referral from the Ways and Means Committee for permission to create a one full-time Geographic Information System Specialist, also known as GIS. This is recommended by our HR office to be non-union grade 5 with a step between base and step 11. So we are estimating the annual salary of this position will be between $42,548 and $58,897, with benefits estimated between $16,624 and $23,011. This is all funded by county funds. This is work that's already being done, but not with a correct title associated with it. So we are asking to create this title, and this title will be reporting to the county administrator's office.
Thank you. Questions? Mr. Harris? Excellent.
Second?
Mr. Graves? I was ahead of myself. Now, questions? No? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that is carried. I thank you very much. Does anyone have any old business? New business? Good of the order.
Mr. Chairman, as it appears there's no further business to conduct, I move we adjourn.
Mr. Graves, I thank you. A second? Mr. Ricky. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you all. Good meeting. We are adjourned.